up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato back holding it down in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings network. And if you want to know all the wonderful places you can get that, streaming on Samsung TV Plus, the Roku channel, Xumo Play, DraftKingsNetwork.com, and if you need to catch up, you can always catch the full episodes on the DraftKings YouTube channel here. Fun one today coming up, and a lot to get to with my dad's least favorite morning after in sports, schedule release day. So Claudia, between that and everything else, what do we got coming up today?
You know he's just itching to talk about it. We're going to talk a lot of NFL, but first, the Joker versus the Ant-Man. Can the Nuggets close out Minnesota tonight? And driving for a cause, former tight end Kyle Rudolph and Bubba Wallace will join the show to talk about the upcoming NASCAR All-Star race. An NFL schedule release, as you just mentioned. Senior had his Westwood One schedule release show last night. We're going to watch some of the videos a little bit later on. But Senior, how you doing today? How much fun was that for you?
So it was a 2-hour show, and an hour into it, I thought to myself, my God, there's a whole nother hour. Mm-hmm. I mean, how much can you talk about, week 14? I had the schedule here, week 13 matchup. Is that week 13, week 14, week 11? I don't even know. Week 8. We're talking about all these matchups. You don't even know what team will be on the field by then. But luckily, if we're doing it for Westwood One, doing it with Scott Graham, who I love, and we had a lot of fun doing it. Had some great guests that we'll talk about, including DJ Moore from the Chicago Bears, the lead actor in their social media schedule release, which is the Super Bowl. I know we're going to get into of social media teams, but my God, I mean, they're again, it's one of those things. It's almost like if you are getting a kid ready for Christmas, right? But then 3 days before Christmas, you show them all the presents you're giving them, right? And there's just no surprise anymore. I mean, we've stopped all of that. There's just, here, kids, it's December 20th. Look, here's all your presents. And what do you do on Christmas morning? You already know what you got. So, and we're sitting there trying to hype it up. And listen, don't get me wrong. There's some great matchups. There always is. So there's plenty to talk about. But to me, it just loses steam. And while we always talk about the NFL and the season, the combine, the draft, the start of free agency, people try and put the schedule release in that category. And listen, the NFL doesn't need any help at all. They're the top thing out there. I just can't put the schedule release in the category of those other events.
Well, to your point, congratulations. Good job. I hope you're nursing a powerful hangover this morning, every member of the social teams and creative departments at these NFL buildings, because the job you all did, masterful, incredible work, a lot of really entertaining and creative stuff this year. I feel bad for the Chiefs and Texans, who both decided to debut the hydraulic video and probably were both pretty bummed out to see that from the other side. But Dad, to me, this is just a sign that we're closer to football. Like, it's another way to make it feel real. To me, this is more like when you go to the eye doctor and they do, what's better, this one or this one? And you start to clear up the vision a little bit, because we're so far away from the season for all those other events that you're not really sure what it's going to look like. Now it's come into focus. Now it feels real. And that's sort of the spring moving forward, stuff blooming that makes sports fans excited.
The only problem with that, and Scott Graham, the host of the show, mentioned it kind of right at the end. He said, now everybody gets jacked up. You find out the when you're playing these teams, the social media teams do their schedule release. Everybody's jacked up. Now we wait 4 months for the start of the season. So everybody gets brought up, and now you just kind of got, okay, now we got to wait until September for this thing to start. Listen, I get it, and just about anything the NFL touches is going to be gold. Talk about the 5 international games again, going to Brazil this time around. So there are certainly things that are interesting to talk about. But as we know, we sit there and talk about on the show, and everybody does, oh, look at that week 14 matchup, which sounds great now, but in week 14, when they're wondering, the network, who the hell they're going to promo because there are people hurt, you're wondering what that game is going to be. So I guess I just look at it in a more realistic view. I need to go with it a little more. I know, I get it, but it just doesn't have that oomph to me like a lot of other things does in the NFL.
God, you and Scott Graham must be a riot at parties the way you come in and pop the balloons of all these little kids walking into NFL schedule release day.
No. What we do, Claudia, is we have fun. We make fun of. We have our jokes and we have a good time with it. So don't lay down with that, Golic. You know, I can turn chicken, into chicken
did
salad.
You just call me
I can do that. I did.
Did you just call me Golic?
I did.
That was weird.
That was really weird.
Yeah, I did.
That
I
is
didn't
the
call you
first
Gojo.
time
I called
that's
you
ever
Golic.
happened in my 34 years of life.
He's serious.
You know what? You're Golic before Gojo. He's Golic. Well, he's Mikey, but Golic before Gojo. Mikey.
I have no idea what just happened here, Claudia.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounded weird to me too. All I was gonna say is Senior played the part. I think if you didn't say on our show that you don't like the schedule release, people would have never known. So you played it off well, Senior. And I think you could admit the videos do make it a lot more fun. If it was just the simple schedule release, it wouldn't be. But we can make fun of Harrison Butker in the kitchen, and we can make fun of this and that and relive the sim days, which we're gonna get to all this a little bit later on. So I just want to congratulate you, Senior, on playing the part. Good job.
Thank you. That was again, we did what we had to do.
Yeah.
But the schedule release videos are the thing everybody is waiting for, and I know we're going to get into that. I had my favorites. I had ones I didn't like. I had ones I had no clue, did not understand one part of it at all, which certainly is not shocking.
Nope. I think one of the most powerful and freeing bits of information that everyone can admit in their life is when things are not for them, and to understand that's okay. Yeah. Because as we go along, there are going to be fewer and fewer of those things that are for us here. Speaking of a joyless run through accomplishment, Claudia, let's get to the Boston Celtics win last night. They head to the Eastern Conference Finals now for the third straight year, and do so in the same fashion we become accustomed to in this series with the Cleveland Cavaliers, letting it be way too close as the Cavs have next to no one on the court.
How is this a one-possession game early in the fourth when everybody is hurt? Donovan Mitchell's not there. LeVert's not there. Never even saw Jared Allen. This series should have been a sweep. It is what it is, okay? We're going to the third Eastern Conference Finals. That's all you can really ask for. And when it came down to it, interesting to see, just 11 from Brown. Tatum led the team with 25, 22 from Al Horford. So, yes, this team I don't think is the model of consistency, but they get there. They definitely are the most talented team. The issue is now you're going to face an up when it comes to challenge. But in the end, Tatum credits the whole entire organization, and I mean everybody, for their success.
It just shows the character of the team, the organization, right? People might think that it's a given that we're supposed to be here, but I give a lot of credit to everybody in the front office, the coaching staff, the trainers, the guys that hand out the equipment, the ball boys, the cooks, the chefs, security team. We're all in this together, and I mean that. Everybody has an effect on each other, and we all impact each other to help winning and build this culture that we have, and everybody should be proud of themselves. And obviously, it's not the end all be all. We want to win the championship, but we're doing something right.
See, Doc Rivers, that's how you're supposed to bring up the other people in the organization. You don't blame the ball boy and the towel boy when things are going wrong. You only praise them when things go right, Dad. That's day one sports leader stuff.
I would have loved to have praised the chefs in my day, but we didn't have chefs in my day. We didn't have kitchens in my day in our facilities, and we didn't get meals. So I was like, man, that'd have been really nice. It's a cool thing to do, no doubt about it. But Claudia, I got to ask you, as a Celtic fan, how confident do you feel? I mean, this team just seems to play well enough to get the job done, though they're winning and they're moving on, but we know what they've done in the playoffs before. 3 straight years now to the conference final. I think 6 of the last 8 years. What's your confidence level of them getting to the finals?
It's so tough to say because what I said going back to the last game was complacency has been their issue. And I don't think it's a lack of talent or will in that situation, but they just know they don't have to go 100% full steam ahead to beat these teams, and they don't need to blow them out by 30, so they're okay with sort of just closing the deal in the end. That worries me, though, because is that going to work against a Knicks or Pacers team? Good luck going up and down the court with the Pacers. They're not going to take their foot off the brake, so you certainly can't. We've been talking about this Knicks squad as hobbled as they have been, the amount of dog they have in them, so I think a lot of Celtics fans are worried about it. I have faith because I do think if they can stay relatively healthy, I don't know the Porzingis situation, they're talented enough to take either of those two teams down in the East. For lack of a better term, I said an up and challenge. But you get it. This is going to be a next level. You face 2 squads in the Heat and the Cavs that were without some of their best players. You can look at the long list, but Donovan Mitchell not playing in this game and giving Evan Mobley 33, they dominated them in the paint, right? Like the Celtics didn't have much power over the paint or the boards.
No.
And then Marcus Morris, well, I should say more so the boards, but they gave up those second chance opportunities in the paint. And then Marcus Morris, 25 points. So those things worry me, Senior, but I do think the Celtics will be fine. Looking at the odds now, of course, they're a little bit heavier favorites to win it all at -130, but this is going to be interesting to see how they take on the next guy in the East. GoJo.
Certainly the injury of the playoffs is the calf, right? That was Mitchell had the calf, Porzingis has the calf, Jamal Murray has a calf. That seems to be the injury of choice right now. Special shout out to a guy I know even a couple of years ago, Mike, you were kind of apologizing for putting him by the wayside. Al Horford. Al Horford just keeps getting it done. Al Horford went 22, 15, and 5 points, rebounds, and assists. He's in his 17th season. He's over 38 years old. He's only the 3rd player in NBA history to be over 38 in a playoff game to go for at least 20, 15, and 5. The other 2, LeBron and Kareem. It's LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Al Horford as the only players to do that in the playoffs. He took 15 shots, 13 of them were threes. And he hit 6 of them. Mike, dude just keeps on keeping on. It's amazing.
The most relatable thing on earth is that he really embodies the I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was, because he had been 4 of 22 from 3 in the 4 games leading up to that in the series. And just now, which again, as someone who's only 34, I can get it because that's me most days, is just clanking them off the iron in whatever aspect of life I'm competing in there. But he has lived long enough to be the Joel Embiid stopper on the Boston Celtics, the if you can't beat him, join him with the 76ers, and now back on the Celtics trying to help them do this. The bottom line is, Claudia, I think you bring up an interesting point. The Boston Celtics haven't been meaningfully tested. And I think we see with teams of their caliber, teams of Denver's caliber, when you're not tested, you can play with your food. Denver did it in the first round against the Lakers. They did it through the first 2 games with the Timberwolves, but they ran into a better team that forced them to evolve to that next step in their championship process. And so now we're seeing, man, Denver starts to look like the team that won it all last year. We haven't had to see the Boston Celtics really touch the level that we saw from them during the regular season when they were whole. I don't think they can beat Denver without Kristaps Porzingis. I think ultimately that's the biggest decider in their championship effort because, like you said, they've had no post presence without him. Cleveland was able to beat them up in there, and you're talking about the final boss of post presences when you come about the Denver Nuggets. And so I think that'll ultimately decide that. But in the Eastern Conference, you're right. Whether it's the Knicks who are up 3-2 right now or if the Pacers are able to come back and win, you're going to get a much better team. Even though the Knicks aren't healthy like the rest of the teams that Boston's played in the East, they're better at absorbing that clearly and putting out a product that's still incredibly competitive. And so, Dad, it's going to force Boston to play their best basketball, whatever that looks like without Kristaps Porzingis, who, again, got a lot of credit for being the change in this Boston Celtics teams that's actually elevated them to this next level where we thought, oh, they can finally get over the hump.
They're not the first or last team that plays to their competition, right? That you just think they should blow a team out, and before you know it, a team missing two of their top players, one star, is in a 1-possession game in the 4th quarter. But they pull it out. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you win by 1 or 40. If you have your parade in your city, which Boston's had a lot of parades, that's all that matters. So I know there's that talk. I know there can be that doubt, but I think the road for them was not the toughest road of all time. That's for sure. Depending on which team you get, you have game 6 now, Friday with the Pacers and Knicks. If it ends there with a Knick win, then they play game 1, I believe, Sunday. If it goes to 7 games, the first game will be Tuesday. But if you get a Knick team, it's a beat-up team that we talked about that's 1 win away from moving on. So I guess you can look at the glass half empty or half full. You're not overly impressed, Claudia, with the way they're playing all the time, but they're winning and they're moving on. So when it comes down to teams still standing at the end, they're still standing.
They are still standing. They're making it through and finding a way. The one person that might not still be standing with their team, and this is a really interesting subplot to yesterday that I didn't see coming and becoming the headline right away, Claudia, was the fact that now that the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, again, decimated by injury by the end, certainly a different version of themselves, outperformed so many people's expectations, an incredible defensive team this year, immediately, once the body, not even cold, Brian Windhorst gets up on ESPN and decides to go back to, now, why is that? And so show Donovan Mitchell the door here. This is fascinating.
I'm trying to walk the line because I don't want anybody to freak out in my hometown of Cleveland. But there are a number of teams that have their offers ready.
Are the Lakers one of them?
They're ready, of course.
The Lakers?
Absolutely.
The Knicks?
I don't think the Knicks are trying to win this Eastern Conference
Understood.
Series, but certainly across the river there in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn.
So we've got the Nets and the Lakers apparently, Dad, as suitors for Donovan Mitchell, which to Wendy's point, like, Brian, I appreciate the sentiment towards your hometown and the care and caution. But once they've been through LeBron leaving, I think everything else after that isn't going to feel quite as bad. So, Dad, what do you see Donovan Mitchell as in terms of a potential option for the Los Angeles Lakers to go out and add a star the way we've talked about them having room for this summer?
I mean, since he's come over from Utah to Cleveland, he's averaged, I think, 28, 29 points a game. He's in the teens as far as 40-point games for Cleveland. So he's certainly lived up to his end of the bargain. He has one more year on his deal at $35 million. Then he has a player option for 25-26 at $37 million. He's also eligible to sign a 4-year extension this offseason. So that obviously would, well, unless you do a sign and trade or however it's going to work for them. We'll see. I mean, he's a guy that is, I'm sure, looking for a championship. But as I said, with each player, each coach, whatever, everybody has their different reasons for what they want to do. If he's looking to try and grab a ring somewhere, I don't know what he sees with the Cavs about, how the future's going with the other teams in the Eastern Conference that are ahead of them right now. Does he look at this as a positive with a guy like Jared Allen out, and he was hurt as well, of where they may go? If not, he may look around as well. I'm sure Cleveland would like to keep him, but you never know what's on a player, or like I said, a player or a coach's mind when they have the ability to control some of their destiny.
I think it's interesting that Brian immediately kind of poo-pooed the Knicks, at least for now, while they're in the midst of this, because they did try and trade for Donovan Mitchell when he was leaving Utah prior to him ending up in Cleveland. I think it's an interesting option for the Lakers, Dad, if there's something we really want to pursue, because I think the thing I always look at a Lakers team, or really any LeBron James team, is you need someone who can be the adult in the room when LeBron's not on the floor, or in this case, as LeBron ages, and you start to need to take some of that stress off him, especially in the regular season. And you look at Donovan Mitchell, who was one of the guys that came online during the bubble season, one of the guys that really popped inside there, pun fully intended, and now is 27 years old, coming into what's usually the prime of an NBA player's career, that 27, 28, 29-year-old range. And so pairing him potentially with Anthony Davis as the part of your future in Los Angeles could be a hell of a bridge program. I don't know what the appeal necessarily would be about the Brooklyn Nets for him at this juncture, but we'll wait and see on that. Brian Windhorst, ever the showman, sprinkling this into our offseason diet a little bit early, right over the top of our kibble. But coming up next, let's get to the main course. Luka Doncic and the Mavs head to Oklahoma City and send a message after a lackluster Game 4. Next, you're on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. The Thunder and Mavs will play their Game 6 this weekend on Saturday. The Mavs, 4-point favorites, now up 3-2 on the series after the 105-92 Game 5 win. Luka, another 30-point triple-double. He had 31, 10, and 11, the third 30-point triple-double of his career. Some crazy alley-oops coast to coast, all of that, but no words for the refs this time.
Focus on basketball. I talked to them normal, without complaining and nothing. I think it was the whole game, nothing. So I just go out there, hoop, have fun, man. Have fun with the old Luka. So smile on my face.
The old Luka, he was blocking shots. He joked too, like maybe next year I'll be Defensive Player of the Year, So he is a very likable player when he's not complaining to the refs. I think he's likable all year round, but that's just me. But interesting to see this series. OKC, that young, hungry team that came in. I think we compare them a little bit to the T-Wolves, this Mavs squad with Luka injuries list that is very lengthy. But they're still showing up. And like I said, 4-point home favorites here. GoJo, what's your take on the series so far?
My take is that, Dad, much like we saw in the NFL, where we had in the last couple of years a bit of a renaissance when it comes to the importance of the ground game. Not necessarily that it's replacing pace and space as the flavor of the day, but the fact that if you don't have that as your bedrock, especially in the current league, you're going to have a bad time. We saw teams in the NFL playoffs get run all over. The same seems to be said for size along the interior in the NBA during this postseason. Now, we've seen this massive influx of incredibly talented bigs that have made their way into the NBA. Obviously, the headliner for that is Nikola Jokic with the Denver Nuggets, who's the best player in basketball right now. But you go on and on down the list, and we've got all of these freak shows. Giannis and now to Wemby, and certainly Chet Holmgren falls into that category. But still, the necessity for just pure size and that presence in there continues to be a thing that can make it a bad time for teams. And what we've run into, I think, with Dallas and Oklahoma City is Dallas went out at the trade deadline and they got themselves some size on the interior. And they might not be stretch fives and they might not be star names, but between Gafford and all these guys that have gone in and made life really brutal in the interior for Oklahoma City, who has Chet Holmgren, who's a great player, but outside of that, doesn't have a lot of size to go down there and bang on the boards and do some of the dirty work necessary. That's been the thing that's undermined them. And when you couple that then with a motivated Luka Doncic who's not worried about yapping at the ref every time he's going back up the court, the results are pretty incredible for this Dallas team, and it's why I think they're poised to move on to a Western Conference Finals appearance.
Definitely happy to hear Luka say that. We talked about that the other day. Just stop whining all the time and just play. I remember Shaq had talked about that on the TNT show. And it's true. You get mad, you get frustrated, but at some point you just got to play. And that's what he did. 54 points Dallas had in the first half. He accounted for 33 of them between scoring and assisting. So he was just playing his game. And what he does, he's certainly one of the best that's out there. Oklahoma City tried to switch it up a little bit, starting Isaiah Joe over Josh Giddey, who had started, I think, the last 229 games. That didn't go so well. SGA really didn't have any help outside of what he did. So I guess the dude, I forgot his name, that made the $100 parlay with the Rangers winning the World Series and the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl, and had Oklahoma City winning the title. Maybe he was smart taking the $80,000 payout. He could have won $1.7 million if Oklahoma City wins the title. And we kept saying, keep going, but he may be the smart one because that number would be dropping right now if he waited this game. We'll still see if Oklahoma City can come back. They certainly have the ability to do that. But this is one of those games, Mike, where we keep saying, well, Dallas looks like the better team. Well, Oklahoma City now looks like the better team. Let's see who has the ability to close it out when need be. I mean, the only yapping Luka really did, I think, was at some fans in this game as opposed to the referees. And that's okay every now and then. There ain't nothing wrong with that every now and then. But it was a good game for them, a good win for them, and putting them one win away from more than likely playing Denver in the Western Conference Final.
Luka himself is sort of a microcosm of what we've talked about with Boston, a team so talented that at times they can look disinterested in what they're doing because they know, oh, we've got the ability to turn it on. And that's, I think, always been the challenge. That's why Jason Kidd's such a fascinating head coach for Luka in Dallas, because you heard the message seemed pretty clear. What he said in the post-game press conference there was what he said in the post-game interview on the court after, and I'm sure is what this coaching staff was saying to him. And Jason Kidd, being a Hall of Famer, being one of the better players of the sports scene, having the cachet to walk into Luka and be like, hey man, listen, you need to shut the hell up and just go out here and do this and enjoy playing basketball. That was the thing that Luka seemed to lead into was, this is me. I enjoy doing this. I like my job. This thing that's maybe constantly lobbed at him and Nikola Jokic that maybe they're not really all that into this. And he went out there and let that shine on center stage and led this team the way he's capable of, which seems to be the story of this year. He's progressed in a big way in trusting his teammates and being a bit more of a leader on both ends of the court.
And your stars obviously need to be the stars in the playoffs to make your run. But then it comes down to who else steps up. We've talked about PJ Washington being consistent, right? A trade deadline pickup for them, how consistent he'd been. Well, he only scored 10 last night, but then you look at Derek Jones. Derek Jones comes in and scores a career playoff high of 19. So you still need that other guy, right? Because as I said, SGA had, I think, 33, but nobody else really helped. So who else is that guy that's going to step up for you when your star's doing their thing, but somebody else needs to do their thing as well?
Yeah, I think ultimately Dallas, and I said this after, I think, Game 3 or Game 4, I think Dallas is going to win this series now. I think they've got what it takes to close the door. I think for Oklahoma City, Dad, to your point, this is a good time to remind everyone kind of where this team is in their life cycle. This is well ahead of schedule. Ramona Shelburne over at ESPN did a great article on the development of Chet Holmgren, and it talked about, hey, SGA kind of stuck around and understood, hey, I saw enough behind closed doors last year with Chet Holmgren and what he's made of to say, as SGA was starting his rise, yeah, I want to be around for what this turns into. But this is really still year one of this core, the Jalen's Williams, Chet Holmgren, SGA, all coming together. And what we see is, hey, when the going gets tough, you can count on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That guy is going to be out there, one of the smoothest bucket getters in the league, a guy who can call his own number the way you need to be successful in the postseason. And for the rest of this team, they're going to go out and need to continue to develop, like we said, some toughness in the interior. They've got some really good perimeter defenders. Obviously, Lou Dort headlines that crew, but there's things they can add, but there's a lot to be really excited about coming off this postseason run if it is indeed coming to its end. There's still a chance they can absolutely pull this out, but I guess I'm just saying is this is a team we do have to kind of reset and say is well ahead of the schedule they should be on.
Listen, I'm excited for a team like Oklahoma City, a team like Minnesota, a team like Cleveland. We'll see what happens with Donovan Mitchell. And I talked about it before, a team like Orlando, with where they are in building. And we've talked to multiple NBA people who have said, yeah, the era of super team building is kind of over with how these teams are building right now. And they're building really, really well to, again, Oklahoma City and Minnesota still has a chance to move on. But even if they don't, we all think those teams I mentioned, that arrow, Claudia, is pointing up for all of them, and the fans should be very, very happy about the future.
That's what I said about this Thunder team, regardless if they win or not. Fans should be happy and excited with the season they had. You talked about the fact that they could still come back. Let's not leave them out for dead. So I'm looking at the odds now. We talk about the right time to get ahead of the market. If you like OKC, you think they can fix the boards, because you talked about it. That has been the biggest disparity, the reason that they're losing. Right now you can get them at plus 290 to win this series. The Timberwolves plus 350 in their series, and the Pacers at plus 210. So, Senior, you and I always talk about the right time to jump on the prices. If you have faith, and I'm curious of those three, who you have the most faith in, because that's some good plus money.
I would jump on Oklahoma City over the others. I would take that. You said what, plus 290? So I'd throw a couple shekels on that one. I think that's the direction I would go. And I'd like to, as a show unit, apologize to everybody, because there's not a sports show out there this morning that is not doing their show with one eye on the camera or the microphone or mouth, and the other eye watching Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods teed off 4 minutes after the show started. So there is not a morning show around the country that is not tuning into Tiger as they're doing their show, just as we're doing.
There's the
This
mention.
is my dad's way of telling you that for the mistakes that he makes, which usually happen during the body of the show, now he at least has an excuse for them as Tiger tees off, which should make this really interesting because coming up next, I'm going to make Dad talk about the schedule release that I'm very excited about here, and he's going to, I'm sure, nod and look over at Tiger off the side of the screen.
Schedule last night, which is basically the Super Bowl for social media teams. Some teams came up with new ideas and some went back to what worked last year, like the Titans.
Hey guys, Red Stallion Girl. I'm here back on Broadway.
Oh, the Bengals. Yeah, I love the Bengals.
Love the Bengals.
Love Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
They peaked in 1970.
And
over the cheese.
Okay.
And if you're not watching, the team that peaked was the Jets. Joe Burrow apparently playing for the Chicago Bears. It's a funny video that they did on Broadway last year. So they had one of the girls from that video interview folks this year. This was the video that everybody loved last year. It still hits. I still think it's hilarious. I do think the Chargers won though. Maybe for the younger audience, I'm learning now because Senior doesn't understand that. But with the Sims, I thought that was hilarious and completely unhinged. This really is, I get it, Senior, you don't love this time of year, but I do because I find this to be hilarious.
I was going to say the social team video portion of this is where it really gets fun. And it's incredible to see which teams empower their social people, give them a bunch of creative freedom. You mentioned it. The Chargers have been the gold standard for this for a while now because their team allows them to take shots at their opponent. Like them going out and drafting off all of the ridiculousness of the last few days and being able to quickly turn around, putting Harrison Butker in the kitchen after all of his comments was A+ trolling inside of the division. And the kind of thing that years ago, I don't know if NFL teams would have necessarily gone along with, Dad, because most of these front offices and team groups are afraid of offending people or afraid of giving teams bulletin board material. But now they let these people take the cuffs off and just go at it.
Yeah, I think we saw in the Tom Brady roast on Netflix that everything is back on the table again and nothing is off limits with what you can talk about. And putting Butker in the kitchen, I thought was just an awesome move. Now, again, I know what Sims is. I've never done it. I've never played it. So I was trying to follow along with all the places this thing was going, and I just couldn't. So that one, but they're not going for the 61-year-olds in this one. So this, as Claudia said, is for the younger generation, and I get it. Listen, I watched a lot of them, and I thought they were okay. The ones that stood out to me, and I know it was Tennessee and KC that did the same thing, right, with the hydraulic press. I like that because I like seeing things get smashed. Houston, I'm sorry. Yeah. I like watching TV shows where they're demoing a house or demoing something. I like when things get broken. So I like the hydraulic press of just smashing things associated with the opponent. I thought that was cool. I really liked how Denver brought in Lewis Hamilton to taste all the different foods from the teams that they were going against. I thought that was a pretty good move because Lewis is obviously a big star. I'm not going to lie. The one I kind of dug the most was the Colts, having their coach and players segging up by grade school recess football, how the one class's defense was playing so well and the other class couldn't get the offense going. So they bring in the coach of the Colts and some of the players, and he's up on the board drawing offensive plays to the kids with the blank stares on their face. I thought they did a really, really good job with that one. That was definitely one of my favorites.
Yep, including kids, usually always a good formula. I know the Cincinnati Bengals did that too with the mascot football game that I thought had some really funny notes there, but got to give it up for some of the cinematic nods from certain teams yesterday because we have a lot of the animated stuff. Jacksonville Jaguars, the Emerson Lazia Americas team went with the X-Men 95 trend, did a great job of that. We obviously mentioned the Sim stuff, but I thought the real standouts, the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, budding acting superstar, a callback to Andy Dwyer living in the pit in early Parks and Rec, a role that Josh seems born to play, was a perfect marriage of skill sets. You had the New England Patriots, Good Jules Hunting, recreating Goodwill Hunting there with him. Ernie Adams playing the role of Robin Williams was an exceptional group there. And Rob Gronkowski continues to star in his role here as his affable buddy playing the Ben Affleck part. Great stuff there. The Bears did Ferris Bueller's Day Off spoof. So, Dad, I thought everyone that decided to go relevant movie nods did a really, really good job of following through.
Yeah. I thought the New England one was fantastic. I thought both those guys played their role well, especially Gronk. I mean, the dude, coming off, again, that roast, if you've seen it, just what those guys did there. But I thought it was and you're right. Playing off a movie, I think, is a cool thing, and I thought they did it just incredibly well. The Bears with Ferris Bueller and DJ Moore, we actually had him on our show last night live. He said that was the second time in his life he acted after he did something in high school. I asked him to grade himself. He gave himself a B+ for it. He talked about a Mike, a guy we've gotten to know, a guy I've known for a while and has become a real social media star since his playing days. I asked him what it was like working with Spice Adams. He said, that dude is out there, man. He said he throws himself into his acting, and he said he was a lot of fun to be around in the couple of scenes he's done with him. So you're right. When you play off a movie and how close you get to it, I kind of dig that. But playing off the movie, I would give New England absolutely the nod for what those guys did.
Yep. So great job all around. Congratulations to the social teams. You guys nailed it. Now go enjoy a little break while we mainline the rest of this football because, Claudia, we have superlatives to hand out like we do for most NFL subjects as we look at the schedule release here. So let's get this cracking now.
Yeah, you talked about some of the rematches, and this was one of the Easter eggs that we got before they actually gave us the schedule. They sort of already gave us the schedule, telling us what rematches we would see. So the one I want to know is which games are likely to get the most hype, either from the football world or maybe just you, GoJo.
Yeah, Dad, I think this is a good spot to look at. We have a lot of really good rematches on the schedule this year. We get a Super Bowl rematch between the Chiefs and the 49ers on October 20th. You get the Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills in November playing a series and a rivalry that with Mahomes and Josh Allen has become incredible. The Lions-49ers NFC Championship rematch game very late in the season, December 30th for that one. Baltimore and Houston on Christmas. There's a lot of good ones, but Dad, I don't know if we can make it out of week one without having this conversation, because when I look, even a Super Bowl rematch doesn't pop to me the same way that Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens the Chiefs hosting the Baltimore Ravens does in week one. A lot like last year, you've got what could be the two best teams in the AFC that should both be healthy and at the height of their powers opening up the NFL season.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that's the game to look at without question. You know, we were in Kansas City last year for the start of the season when they played Detroit. And that was Detroit won that game by a point. No Travis Kelce. Chris Jones was holding out, sitting in his suite watching. And that was a fun game to watch, but it was AFC, NFC. This game, literally, week one, can decide the tiebreaker for the AFC. I mean, whoever wins this game, because we expect both these teams to be near the top or right at the top. So this game could decide. And remember last year, it was Baltimore that had home field, and it was Kansas City. We all were going, oh my God, Kansas City's got to go on the road for the first time. And they handled it pretty damn well. There's no doubt about that in making it all the way and then winning the Super Bowl. But everybody would like to play at home in the playoffs. And it is amazing to me that a week one matchup could decide that right out of the gate as we watch the rest of the season play out. But I'm with you. To start off with that game, that is starting off. That's like starting off like the NASCAR season starts off with the Daytona 500. You know, they hit their Super Bowl right away. You know, and this is one of the biggest games the entire season right out of the gate.
Yeah, and it's going to be fascinating because this Chiefs team feels a lot more stable than it did going into last season for all the reasons that you mentioned. And on the other side, Baltimore's the one that's got to kind of show people, hey, we can maintain that standard now that people have come in and poached our defensive coaching staff, now that we've had some guys leave in free agency and have had to change things up. Lamar Jackson in year two with Todd Monken in this offense that sort of stalled a little bit when it finally got to that most important time in the postseason and abandoned that run game that now has three new offensive linemen up front. And so I'm fascinated to see how they negotiate that right out of the gate as we get a game that certainly is important. But you mentioned with Kansas City, they've now reached the place in this dynasty where they no longer have to be concerned with, oh, do we have home field throughout? They dispelled all those notions they couldn't win on the road in the playoffs last year or hadn't been asked to yet. And so we get started on a very interesting note with the NFL season there. We are just getting started, however, with these NFL schedule superlatives. Coming up next, we'll take a look at a very different holiday season that's on the horizon in the NFL, thanks to a new broadcast rights deal that just got announced yesterday here on GoJo and Golic next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. I hope you have an extra $1,600 available because you will need it to watch every game this NFL season. 7 different subscriptions because now you will need Netflix to watch the Christmas Day games exclusively on this streaming site, not the other 6 that you had to download. Chiefs, Steelers, Ravens, Texans. I am sorry, but this is ridiculous, GoJo. Another subscription?
So, yeah, this is something interesting, Dad, that we've seen now. I saw everyone lamenting yesterday that there are going to be games that will stream exclusively on 4 different platforms now. Claudia mentioned the 7 that you might need, but Peacock, Amazon Prime, ESPN Plus, and now Netflix will all be receiving games standing alone on their platform. Obviously, like we talked about the other day, trying to make it so you can't go anywhere else. You got to toggle between apps if you want to flip and go try and watch, in this case, the NBA on Christmas Day or something like that. So they're closing the door and saying, now you just can't leave here. The one thing I will say, Dad, with this is, at the very least, they're going to a platform that a bunch of us already had. Like, the world at large might have had Netflix a little more. It's not quite as ubiquitous as even Amazon Prime, though. I think more people in the US and Canada have Amazon Prime for other reasons than they would Netflix. But at the very least, that's what I can take solace in, because other than that, Dad, like everything else with the NFL schedule, they're doing this because it makes them more money and because they can, because they know you're hooked to the narcotic.
$150 million a game Netflix played the NFL for each of those games. And you're right, they're hooked on it, because how much complaining was there when, what was it, the Chiefs and Dolphins playoff game was on Peacock and everybody lost their mind. Ratings, great. Amazon, every Thursday, ratings have been excellent. Netflix, and I, like you said, and I agree, they already have millions of people on subscription. So I think this is less of a hit, but this is where we've gone. We've gone from cable cutting, years ago, to everybody picking up streaming services. Now everybody's like, okay, I got 40 different streaming services. How do I cull that? What do I decide I want to do? Because I got, a monthly subscription for so many different streaming services. How do I pull that together? And I know some are bundled, but man, it gets tough for the consumer out there on what do I get? Because a lot of times you're getting the subscription just for a specific thing, but then you continue to pay monthly on it when you're really not watching a lot of the other stuff. As I said, Netflix for me is great. I already have a subscription and I watch every bit of content there is on it. So this is a win-win for me.
Yeah, you're really the tendency breaker for your generation that we constantly worry about. How are they going to manage all this? The answer from my father is, provided he has my mom to enter the passwords and do all of the hard stuff and getting him there, we'll be just fine living on those platforms. We have the hilarity of Comcast unveiling their bundle with Apple TV Plus, Peacock, and Netflix, as if this just isn't reimagined cable. It's all ridiculous. As far as the games on Christmas Day, Dad, obviously, Chiefs Steelers will be fine depending on what Pittsburgh becomes most of this season. I think that's just going to be another chance to get Taylor Swift out in front of the masses for the NFL. You've got the Ravens playing Houston, which I think is actually the better on-field game given the trajectory of those two teams. So we'll get to that in a bit, Dad. What about another complaint for teams that we usually see with total travel in here? The team that's got the most to complain about on that front. We've got, in terms of miles traveled on the schedule, the Chargers leading the way, next, followed by the Dolphins and the Seahawks as the top 3 for the longest distance traveled, while on the bottom end here, the Washington Commanders will travel the shortest difference, then followed by the Bengals and Colts.
Yeah, listen, it is always about that especially we keep talking about the West Coast to East Coast, how the records are bad for some teams when you have to go play, especially that 1:00 game when you're traveling across the country. And when you're going east to west, I did it a couple times in Philadelphia when we'd go play, have 2 games on the West Coast or on the West Coast and then maybe the Midwest. We'd stay out there for the week. So it's always something, Mike, that, and Scott Graham asked me on the show, what do I look at as a player? It's when I see the schedule, and there's a few things. There's how am I going to hot places early? Am I going to cold places late? Players I'm playing against, but what messes up the itinerary? What messes up the schedule, right? Because we're itinerary people when you play sports. And I loved Sunday at 1 o'clock, but now there's Monday, now there's Friday, now there's Saturday, now there's Wednesday. So, and then there's the travel across the country, especially east to west when you stay out there. How does everything affect your schedule to the point where it can affect your team?
Yeah, there's a lot. We'll get to some rough stretches that have been created by a lot of the new realities in the schedule making that are going to get some team, but it's absolutely a massive factor. These are the kinds of things that add up over the course of a long season. It's the challenge as the NFL has expanded the regular season, expanded the amount of international games they're going to do, added things like the Christmas game to try and balance all this in a way that doesn't turn it into a total meat grinder, even more so than it already is for the players involved. Dad, let's go back to most anticipated reunion now. We got some new faces in new places. I think there's 10 different teams that'll have a different starting quarterback this year than they did last year. But I'm circling Saquon Barkley's return to New York, October 20th. Saquon and the Eagles go in their first matchup in the division, going back to New York where Saquon played for the Giants for so many years. Because we've seen that animosity this offseason between Saquon at basketball games, getting chirped by Eagles fans. There genuinely seems to be people that were disappointed and dismayed by the fact that he went along in the division. And so I'm fascinated to see what this Eagles team is on offense this year under Kellen Moore. Certainly the Giants have a lot of question marks here, but this is a fun little subplot for a non-quarterback.
Yeah, for me, it's Pittsburgh going to Denver. That's Russell Wilson going back to Denver, where that could not have worked out worse, right? Sean Payton didn't want Russell Wilson there. Russell Wilson, his first year under Sean, played horribly. The second year was a little bit better and couldn't wait to end that relationship quick enough. So, as I've always said, whether it's amicable or not, whenever you play a former team, now it's not like Russell had been there forever, but it was not good. So he's probably going to get booed by the crowd there. And players want to show the team, the coach and management, you made a mistake, right? You made a mistake. I even did that when I went from Philly to Miami as a free agent. Philly, I didn't think, offered enough to stay there, whether it was a right decision or not. And when I went to Miami, we went back to play Philly. And man, I mean, there's just that little more in your motor that wants to get you going to say, you know what, you should have kept me here. So with Russell Wilson, that is, you're human, man. He is going to want to show, listen, I'm still the guy that was especially in Seattle. And I think that is going to be just an awesome reunion, one where there's going to be maybe a few daggers stared at each other in that one.
Yep, a lot of uncomfortable stuff there, and probably more so for the guys in the Steelers locker room that are now going to have to do high knees on the plane with Russell Wilson now that he's over on the south side there. Dad, last one here, and I think this is interesting, the most brutal stretch. You talk about all the time what the actual utility of seeing the schedule out in order it is. Part of it is getting to see, hey, where do teams run into the tough patch of their season they're going to have to weather? And man, we talked a lot about the Ravens, but I saw their safety Kyle Hamilton tweet about this. They've got 3 games in 10 days in December. At the end of the long season, as you're starting to get ready for the postseason run, they play the Giants on December 15th, the Steelers on the 21st, and then finish up on Christmas Day with the Houston Texans. And this is one of the things. I saw Mina Kimes talk about this on Around the Horn or NFL Live yesterday, one of the two, that as the NFL continues to branch off and have these Netflix Christmas Day specials and play games here after they enjoyed the success on the holiday last year, this is another area where they forsake the bodies of the players. 3 games in 10 days at that point of the season is going to be about, can the Ravens survive that without an injury gauntlet that's going to deflect and deject their postseason run potentially there? And that's the kind of thing that you have to worry about when you look at the NFL's continued expansion into all these different areas.
Yeah, the league I think they care about one thing, which I'll get to, but for the most part, it's like they want to make a schedule that's appealing to most. And again, what we don't know is where games may be flexed toward the end of the season. That's always going to happen. But you're right. I mean, when you're trying to conserve, when you have that many games and that kind of a stretch, in that short of a stretch on what you do. But I do like the way they did most of the Thursday night schedule, which is a lot of division games. I think that was the right way to go about it, since you have less time to really work up that new crazy game plan. You're playing a team you're very familiar with.
Yep, certainly plenty more we can get to in the coming days that I'll force you through here as the schedule releases out. But coming up next, got a fun weekend in NASCAR on deck and a great collaboration across sports lines that we'll get to next on GoJo and Golic. All right, hour number 2 here. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato. And Dad, in the recent weeks, we've had a lot of warring factions among different sports across lines. Basketball and football going at it after Austin Rivers went on McAfee and started lighting everybody up about who could make the switch to sports easier. So I like it better when we get sports coming together to help each other for a good cause across different lines. And that's something we've got coming up this weekend for the NASCAR All-Star Race, as 2311 Racing has partnered up with Alltrue, a company we've talked about on here before, a great charitable platform co-founded by my former teammate and former NFL tight end Kyle Rudolph, that debuted the new look for Bubba Watson's number 23 Toyota Camry. Bubba Wallace. God, Jesus. Golf is on my brain right now. Bubba Wallace's 23 Camry going into this weekend. The wrap is awesome, and it's an exciting new twist here to continue to promote the great work that Alltrue is doing here at an exciting time in this NASCAR weekend here. And so we're excited to be joined by Bubba Wallace today, who's going to be driving that slick new car here this weekend. Bubba, good morning. How you doing, sir?
Hopefully I'm better than Bubba Watson, that's for sure. How are y'all?
Yeah, a lot better, I'm sure, here. No, we appreciate it. So take us through how this came together. I mean, obviously, I've known Kyle for a long time. I think you guys got linked up earlier this year, but how did this come together to make this happen for All-Star Weekend?
Yeah, I was able to meet Kyle the 500 weekend in February down in Daytona, and we got to spend, call it 15 minutes together, just talking about life and the things that he's been able to do, and the Alltrue platform and somehow we're able to make it all come together. And the All-Star weekend was open for us, and I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to showcase what it's all about. Our Toyota Camry looks pretty good with the colors on the side. So excited to see it all come together this weekend. We head up to the track tomorrow and see how everything will go.
Very cool. Great cause. Great. All of that. But we've done so much talk of mixing sports. Can NBA players play football? Can football players play in the NBA? The one thing I don't think a bunch of other sports players would do is want to get in a car and go 200 miles an hour. I know I wouldn't. I got to go on it was only the pace car at Indy, and we're going about 190 miles coming around a turn, and where I could have reached out and touched the wall and almost wet myself. Have you had other athletes in a car, or how have you seen other athletes handle going in a NASCAR, going that speed and not wanting to get out of the car?
Yeah, a lot of them are very uncomfortable. They talk about how fast they drive on the roads, but then we actually show them the speed that we are capable of going, and it's a whole new realm that they've never even imagined. So it provides quite a scare. It's pretty funny to witness their reactions. It doesn't matter if we're going 90 or 190. The reactions are all different, and so it's super cool to give that opportunity. So I'm not sure if Kyle's been in a car. A little too big to fit in one. But I'm pretty sure we can make it happen.
There we go. I say Kyle Rudolph popping into the chat now, and I saw you giggling as soon as you came in at this point in the conversation. Rudy, have you ever gotten behind the wheel of one of these?
No, I've not. We did some simulator driving down at the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte, but to Bubba's point, I don't know that I would fit in his car. So that would be the first hurdle that we have to figure out is how do I get in the car? But I do have, family that has raced and been around racing. I may have gone a little fast on, the 73 toll road in Orange County at some point where it's straight, but I've never been in a NASCAR and gone the speeds that these guys are going close to walls and through turns. It's something I definitely want to try. I'd love to get in the car with Bubba. That's for sure.
The thing about it is other athletes get into these cars and go alone on a track with a driver and get scared. Then throw, 20, 30 cars out there where you're trading paint and there is no way guys are going to want to do that. So Kyle, we asked Bubba earlier, what started and how did this relationship come to fruition?
I actually had the opportunity to go over and take Henry to Daytona this year. And, we got to meet Bubba, spend some time with Bubba, learn about his organization and the great work that they're doing. And then, through some of the other contacts, the president at 2311 Racing, guys that I've known for years in the sport, we just really saw a lot of similarities with All True and 2311 and our visions of working together to create positive change. It just seemed like such a great opportunity for the two of our brands to work together. And, we couldn't be more excited to have Bubba as the car that we're representing and being the paint scheme for All-Star Race this weekend on his 23 Toyota Camry. We're just super fired up to be not only a part of the NASCAR family in 2311, but the fact that Bubba is our driver and we're on his car.
You mentioned the team aspect of this, Rudy, and I think that's something that kind of across sports always has that binding tie. Bubba, for you guys at 2311, since you'd come over here to now through this year, how much has that team dynamic changed for you guys, and how much has it helped you as a driver now, with the season that you've had so far leading into All-Star Weekend?
Yeah, since 2311's inception, we've really wanted to take the idea of one team and really take that to the next level. So yes, there's a 23 and a 45, but we act as one team. We show up to the racetrack, basically the same race cars, a little bit tweaks in here for driver comfort. But the way we interact, the way we go about our everyday business, Monday through Sunday, is one team mindset. It takes a whole army to win one of these races. Now there can only be one winner out of the two cars, but we still work together to get there and achieve those goals. And so it's really been fun to kind of build the reputation and be a part of the whole process since day one. And so to have, a little bit of your footprint is something I can proudly say that I'm a part of, right? But just the team dynamic, you don't realize how many people that you actually need to make this all work until you get into the thick of it. And you have to have everybody on your side.
I'm wondering, Bubba, we the three of us we're football players. So when we prepare for a game, how we prepare for a game. And in football, you can go into a game being hyped, being mad, being aggressive, because that can work for you. You look at baseball, they can't really go about it that way, be mad and aggressive like that, have to be a little more laid back. How is it for you preparing for a race? What mindset do you have to get in before you get out there on the track?
And I've tried them all. I've tried being the nice guy. I've tried being pissed off and angry. Tried being super focused. You just never know. I think the biggest thing for me is trying to control the things that you can control. Now I guess I'm a control freak because I love to try to control the things that I can't. And that's where usually the frustration comes from. But I think if you're focused on every little thing that you need to do, and it's a lot, and it kind of varies throughout each and every weekend, depending on where you go to, right? But if you're focused on that, you're focused on getting on and off pit road, you're focused on passing traffic efficiently, you're focusing on, managing your runs from start to finish. There could be 5-6 runs throughout a race. There's a lot of little bulletin points that you have to focus on. And so whether you're happy and focused, that's fine. If you're pissed off and focused, that's fine. But the main denominator there is focus. So I try to not let any of the outside noise, hours leading up or minutes leading up, you're kind of locked in the game zone. And I think that's the biggest thing. But I don't know. I've always said, my parents and people around me always said I drove better when I was pissed off. So how do I go about getting pissed off before the race? Now, that's a little tricky because I can't just, I don't know. I got to figure out some ways if that's going to help.
Like you said, you keep trying on the hats and see eventually if you can get it to fit just right in that mode there. Speaking of kind of controlling what you can control and all those details, Kyle, on your side, as an NFL player, you've got a lot of things you're trying to balance constantly. The NFL schedule release just came out here, and I know for fans, for people on the outside, it's fun to see all the stuff on social media. It's the celebration there. We talked with Dad about it some before, but for you as a player, especially one who played so recently, what were the kind of things that you focused on at this time of year as you're getting ready for the long haul of your season?
Well, for us, I played so many years in Minnesota. I knew I had an outdoor game in Green Bay and an outdoor game in Chicago. So as soon as the schedule release came out, it was seeing, okay, what games do we have that could potentially be really cold? Do we have, when is the international game if we had it? When is the bye week? Because prior to yesterday, you know who you play and where you play them, but you don't know when. You don't know when the bye week is. You don't know when your Thursday night game is. So really for us as players, when the schedule release comes out, those are the things that you're looking at. When is our Thursday night game? Is it early in the season where that short week might not be a problem? Is it late in the season where, okay, we'll have to manage the short week, but then we'll get 3 days off afterwards? When is the bye week? When is the season broken down into, a 12-week stretch and then a 5-week stretch? So those are the big things as a player that you look at when the schedule comes out. Because like I said, prior to it, the teams you play and where you play them, then it just becomes when. And for us at times, that could mean inclement weather in, the NFC North, but it could also mean we got to go to Florida in September. And that's not easy either. So things like that were things that we looked at when the schedule came out.
And for Bubba, your schedule, your track. So I'm wondering for you, for the casual fan like us, we see a track and we're like, okay, they're driving on a track. But obviously there's differences. What's one or two of the favorite tracks that you like, and maybe one or two of the ones you dislike the most?
Yeah, you say I know my schedule, but I know I have North Wilkesboro this weekend, Charlotte after that, and then I have no idea where we go, somewhere in the country. So I don't really know the schedule. I just get on the plane, and wherever we end up, it's like, oh, okay, that's where we're at. But a couple of my favorites are probably Martinsville, Bristol. Those are the short tracks. But I grew up racing kind of in that environment, and Martinsville, I think. I don't know, Bristol may be the first one, like NASCAR track. When I was 14, I was racing on it. And so I think that one kind of holds a little bit of history and had a lot of fun. Martinsville had a lot of success there. But then the ones I don't dislike, or I do dislike, I have to go with Charlotte Roval. We should just go back to the oval there. It's chaotic. A lot going on, so we can have a whole nother segment on this show to talk about that one. Then another one would be I don't know actually. Chicago was actually a lot of fun. The environment was cool. The racetrack's a little bit on the sketchy side, just the layout of it. But man, the whole environment of that weekend was fun. So I'm just gonna have to go with Roval. That one takes the cake.
All right, that takes the cake there. We've got Kyle Rudolph. We've got Bubba Wallace here. I'm curious, another tie that binds the two of you guys. Bubba, I saw, and congratulations, back in April, you and your wife Amanda announced that you guys are expecting your first child coming up this fall here. So we have Kyle, a veteran dad at this point. Bubba, you're getting ready to take this journey right now. Do you have any questions that you want to bounce off of Kyle here as a guy that's currently raising a whole gaggle of young kids right now?
I think the most important thing we always talk about is the sleep. So I'm trying to just stock up on that right now. So my day is free after this. So I may or may not be going right back to sleep after this. So just trying to stockpile up on all of it.
We got you covered. I'll
Rudy,
make sure
any advice for him?
My wife, Jordan. We got you. You know how Jordan is with sleep. She makes sure these kids are sleeping all the time. They get on their schedule and we go. So I'll make sure you get my wife's book on sleep, because that having 4 kids, starting with 2, you had to make sure that they got into that routine and they got sleep. So, Mike knows my wife and her routine. So sleep is definitely priority number 1.
Perfect.
The toughest part of all of it, Bubba, is you can't really bank sleep. You can't like charge up on sleep because man, there'll be those nights when you're up. It's a tough call. All right. So I'm going to ask Kyle first, and then Bubba, I'm going to go to you. Kyle, if you were working on the pit crew for Bubba, what would you like to be doing in the pit crew? What do you think you could do?
I've been told that if I'm on a pit crew, I'm the jack man, being a big tight end. So I've been told that that's my position. So I'll say the jack man.
So Bubba, now I'll go to you. Let's say, okay, that would be the easiest thing. He can't be the jack man. He has to be something else, something, along the lines with the tires changing or something. What would you trust him, if anything, to do?
Well, there's another position that he could easily do. He could be the gas man, for sure. He could be the gas man. The guy his size is either jack man or a gas man. Man, it would be a detriment to have him be a tire changer for us just because of his size. I know he's quick. I'm sure he can get around the car fast, but size matters, right? So it's one of those things that you just have to just embrace. Like you're big, you got to either be a jack man or gas man. That's it. It's only 2 you can do.
Those tires are low to the ground. Those cars are way down there.
Yeah. They're normal for me.
I was going to say, not as young as you want. Well, I would say those pit crews tend to have a bunch of former athletes. We've seen the pieces done over the years where they'll take a lot of people that were, former college athletes and people looking to still do something that kind of revs their engine, pun fully intended, the same way. So I got to imagine you got some people that can scoot in those pit crews.
Oh, for sure. We, with the way this next gen format and this next gen car has, with the single lug stuff has produced just absolute studs. I mean, our pit crew times, let's call it the previous generation car 3 years ago now, we were trying to get 10 seconds on pit stops, right? And now teams are busting off 7s and 8s, right? And it's crazy. And you're like, okay, that's just 2 seconds. It's a massive chunk of time taken out, especially in our world, right? And so it's super cool to see just how much work and how much effort goes into making a pit stop a good one. But the thing is, you can't just have one. A pit stop at least consists of 3, 3 at minimum. And so we can go onwards to 10, and you want those guys to bust off 8 9s, 8 5s every stop. It's super hard to do. Some teams can do it, some teams can't, and some teams are working to get to that way. So it's a fun process. It can be frustrating at times because we put a lot of pressure on the pit crews. But when we go back to the team mentality, we're pushing each other together to get faster and stronger together.
Well, you guys got a great team at 23-11, but certainly excited to watch your guys' teams both come together this weekend at North Wilkesboro Speedway, the All-Star Race, 23-11 Racing, teaming up to wrap that 23 Toyota car in the all-true colors for the weekend. A great marriage of 2 incredible organizations, causes, and guys that I'm fortunate to know now here. So, Bubba, best of luck this weekend. We really appreciate your time this morning. Rudy, always great catching up with you, buddy, and hopefully we'll talk to you guys again soon. Good luck this weekend.
All right. Thanks, fellas. Y'all have a good day.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Make sure we tell everybody to vote for Bubba at the NASCAR All-Star Fan Vote. So get out there and vote. You can vote up to 5 times a day. So take care of my guy.
Boom.
All right.
There we go.
Like
Let's get it done.
Well
get
done.
out there and vote 5 times a day. Get it in, man. We have a mission now here around the show. So let's wrap our arms around this and go, Dad.
This is one of the things, Mike, I love getting into the mind of somebody like that, because this is something we all think we could cross over in sports to some point. But as I said, you get in one of these cars and drive that fast, and then you're doing it alone on the track. And then imagine 20 more cars out there. I mean, there's just no way. I don't think there's any way that athletes trying to switch over and say, I can try and do this, would have the couillons to be at that speed with other cars right next to them. It's crazy.
Well, between that and all the things that you have to manage, we think about on any given play in a football game, all the different things you're thinking about going into this. And for racing, you hear these guys talk about the analytics and the numbers they're crunching on their car, the tweaks that they've got to make in the lead up to all of this, the constant dulge of information that you've got coming in, all to go out there and go real fast.
look, we have a game 6 tonight, Nuggets, Timberwolves. Timberwolves down in the series after a 2-0 lead. They are 2-point favorites here. But what happened, Anthony Edwards?
They playing better than us right now. They outplaying us. They playing harder than us. They getting all the loose balls. Everything going their way. Yeah, you know, they got the momentum, man. We got to figure out a way to shift it back our way.
Senior, he remains calm, cool, collected. They are slight favorites here in this spot. What's your confidence level? You asked me my confidence level on the Celtics. What's your confidence level right now for this Minnesota team?
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they were to win this game and send it to a Game 7, but I think Denver's going to win this series. I think Denver has a good shot to close it out tonight. I mean, they're just, after being down 0-2, rattling off 3 in a row, I think that's gotten to Minnesota a little bit. They put the clamps on Ant-Man a little bit as well, who had been scoring like crazy in this one. So, what was it? Mike Conley missed the last game, I believe, had a sore Achilles. So, overall, I still like Denver. Doesn't mean Minnesota can't get it done. We'll see. You know, we got the Jokic and Rudy Gobert. What kind of matchup we're going to talk about this time after what Jokic did with 40 in the last game? And again, we just say Rudy Gobert because he was the Defensive Player of the Year. It's not like Joker doesn't do this to everybody when he's on. So I still like Denver to close this out. We talked about the odds before you talked about, and I still would go OKC. I think you said they were plus 290 to still win. So that's still the route I would go of the teams that are remaining that are trying to come back from behind.
I think this one's over. I think now that Denver has had that wake-up call moment, this is going to be the end of it. The last 3 games, 50% from the field, 40% from 3 in all of them as they've really come back online. But I'm excited, Dad, because I know with what we have seen from Anthony Edwards, the competitor, since he's walked into the league, and with what we saw the other night, the guy has been, along with Jalen Brunson and along with Nikola Jokic, one of the premier performers of this postseason in terms of 40-plus point outputs and the kind of ability to take over a game, got really limited this last game. The Denver Nuggets defensive strategy has been to take the ball out of his hands. This is going to be 300 style, Dad. Come back with your shield or on it. And no matter what happens, I know based on who Anthony Edwards is, this is going to be a guy that finds a way to try and take over some stretch of this game and is good enough to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, he is. We see the guys that are going to take the shot, the Jalen Brunsons, the SGAs, the Ant-Man, that they're going to, when their team needs it most, they're not looking to dish it off. They're looking to take that shot. And as we talked about last night, SGA really got no help from anybody else. We'll see where the help can come from tonight for Minnesota to get back in this. It's in Minnesota, so they have the crowd. The last game that was in Minnesota, they saw that crowd going nuts from play one, but at the end it didn't really distract Denver enough. So I'm with you. Whether it goes 7 games or they end it now, I do think Denver's a better team. Would not shock me if Denver were to end this thing tonight. But again, as we talked about, and I know because you're one of the top seeds, Oklahoma City the top seed, Minnesota the 3 seed, but still the 2 of them and Denver were all right there. And I talked about with Cleveland and Orlando. There's a lot of teams that we're not used to talking about, you know, being near the top of the NBA that we're starting to talk about a little more. So while those fans will be disappointed if their teams lose now, the arrow's just really pointing up. Now, where we end up with Denver, if they were to get to the finals and win another one, you still have to overtake them, and we'll have the whole Boston talk again. But I do like some of the teams that are building and the way they're building and what we have to look forward to in the next few years in the NBA.
There's no doubt. Bright stars, the arrow pointing up in a lot of franchises and not necessarily just the big-time markets that we always talk about. So there's plenty of that to look forward to. Dad, I do think one factor for this game, and the last I've seen is he was questionable still going into tonight, but we didn't talk about as much coming off of the last win for Denver, was how important Mike Conley has been for this Timberwolves team and his absence on the court in the last game, how much that affected Anthony Edwards. I said in the past when we look at him, Mike Conley on a team that is Anthony Edwards ascending into superstardom. Certainly the bigs that they've tried to build around there in Gobert and Towns. Mike Conley Jr. is one of the most important things an NBA team can have. An adult in the room who's the ball handler. Someone in your backcourt who, when things are getting hectic, can pump the brakes a little bit and go out there and maybe not be the guy that's going to light it up, not be the guy that the defense ever has to worry about as much on the other side, but can go out there and at least put a governor on things and start to direct traffic. And losing that amidst the approach we saw Denver take against Anthony Edwards the other day was a huge reason why they ended up drowning in that game. And if he's able to go even in a limited capacity in this game tonight, it's another outlet and another valve that you can pull for Anthony Edwards here. But on the other side, Claudia, I still look at this game and say, hey, a lot of this is going to be what adjustment do you get from the bigs. I saw the Inside the NBA crew calling for Karl Anthony Towns to potentially try and check Nikola Jokic some, because we've seen it established. And everyone, no matter how you come at it from, no matter how respectfully, Rudy Gobert, you don't want him in isolation. He's better as a floater, yada, yada, yada. Clearly, that's not going to be a winning strategy. There hasn't been a winning strategy against Joker outside of the early part of this series. And so all eyes certainly going to be trained on the 4-time Defensive Player of the Year as well.
Yeah, that matchup huge, but you talked about Conley on Edwards and whether he plays or not, his props are up, so sometimes that tells us a little something. I'm curious, though, Senior, what you think of that, and I think the two go hand in hand. Kat, by the way, leading the team in that Game 5, but Anthony Edwards only 18 points. His line is set at 29.5, even money to the over, but that's high. I'm curious if you think he makes the adjustments and is a bigger part of this game than he was in that Game 5. And if so, then maybe it sounds like Minnesota would have a chance here.
So I don't know if it's adjustment or just if we lose, we go home. So there's that mentality of I am going to empty the basket here. So I would go over on that. Now, is anybody going to come along for the ride? Like we saw it, as we mentioned, with SGA scoring 33, but nobody else really helped. I think Anthony Edwards is going to find a way to get his, but who else is going to help? Who else is going to be there for them? Somebody else we talked about, like with Dallas, a PJ Washington for a bit. It wasn't him last night. It was Derek Jones. You know, we talk about the others around there of who is going to help. So I think he's going to get it. I would bet the over on that because I think he is going to take shots. He is going to find a way to try to either take shots, drive, get to the free throw line. So I'd go over on that. But the biggest question to me is who else will be there to step up offensively, and how will they defensively handle Jokic. And
that's the thing. Karl had a good game the other night. Gobert even gave them offensive output the other night, but it was they couldn't stop anything on the defensive end. I actually would be inclined, just Anthony Edwards, based on his kind of DNA as a player, I wouldn't be surprised if that number went over, but I still think it's in a losing effort. I think this Denver Nuggets team is done playing around. I think until further notice, again, they're back in the spot, and I'm going to try it a lot like we did with our NFL time capsule before the draft, where right after we got done with the season, we put our takes into a box and we tried to open them on draft day. As a reminder, you can get clouded, and there's a lot of noise that pops into the equation. There's been a lot of noise after Denver had a couple of lackluster games early on in the series, but now we've seen, hey, when they want to do it, they want to go all the way, there ain't nobody like them in the NBA right now. And so I'm reminding myself, as long as this Denver Nuggets team is healthy, and we know, Dad, you mentioned Cavs in the postseason. Jamal Murray dealt with that calf strain early in this series. Absolutely affected part of the output we talked about, but until further notice, the Denver Nuggets are winning the NBA Finals this year. The Denver Nuggets are going to be your champions here in 2024, and I'm going to remind myself of that, even if the boat gets a little rocky, that right now this team is the one best situated with who's available to them at this moment. If Kristaps comes back, maybe it's different in the Eastern Conference, but until notice, they're Dad right now, and everybody else has to deal.
I think we're getting to it, even though it wasn't by seeding because Denver was second here. We all felt they were the best team, that it's going to be chalky and we're going to get Boston and Denver. And you know what Minnesota needs is if they can, Joker doesn't have the games he had like in the first two games of the series that Minnesota won, and Jamal Murray wasn't shooting well, right? That's what they need to hope for. But Jamal Murray has come out and started shooting a lot better, and Joker has been incredible. So if they can find those first couple of game formulas, but I think it really kind of did wake Denver up to where I don't see it going back that way either. So while there's a possibility of it going 7, I do think it could easily end tonight.
GoJo and Golic. I know Senior is wanting an update on Tiger Woods, so even through 4, we'll get to that in a second. But guys, we have to discuss something. Because I, had a nice little streak, 8 days working, was feeling good, and then figured I'll take a day off before I come back. And that one day, the crew decides to have 10-time All-Star, 3-time World Series champ, probably the best designated hitter of all time. Also played for the Boston Red Sox from Boston. David Ortiz came in for an interview. Big Papi. On the day I'm gone. Interesting how that worked out. I'm not bitter about it, though. Guys, how was it, GoJo? Must have been nice to talk with Big Papi.
I mean, Claudia, I really don't want to make you feel any worse than you already do right now, deciding to really just poorly time the break here, but I mean, could not be more delightful, was so giving of his time. Oh, how we all laughed together. Dad, you remember it, the inside jokes that we've got now with our good friend Big Papi here, who asked about Claudia too, was so excited to meet her and see her in studio and was so disappointed, the single tear rolling down his face when he realized that she decided she had better ththings to do. So yeah, it was a crushing moment for everyone involved.
Oh, man.
He was a little surprised that you weren't there. The nice thing is he gave us his number. We're going to hang out. For those that were here, he said, hey, whoever is here on this day, let's go hang out when everybody's in town. So it's going to be great. But in all honesty, he was fantastic. He was a lot of fun to talk to. I can't wait till everybody hears that because I have a lot of similarities of how he was raised and had done things. It's kind of old schoolish, but
I thought you were going to say
I
careers.
thought it was great. He was fantastic. No, God, no, please.
Well, I'll get to watch it with everyone else tomorrow. So make sure y'all stay tuned because we'll have the interview tomorrow.
Claudia, at the very least, the Bruins did you the favor of staving off elimination. You get Game 6 tomorrow night. That's at least something nice that happened while you were away from us.
Lord Sway, baby. We praise him. We love him.
We love to see it. All right, Claudia, you mentioned my dad's been distracted this entire morning. We've had a fun show here today. Bubba Wallace and Kyle Rudolph were awesome with us before. We've got the NFL schedule release that's come out, plenty of NBA action. And every time we get to a break, it's just my father muttering about some putt for bogey that Tiger Woods is standing over as things kick off at Valhalla Country Club in Kentucky. So, Dad, what's been going on here as the PGA Championship gets going this weekend? Who's actually winning? Is Tiger still sweating through his shirt here? Is Sunday Red going to have to alter their product line? What the hell's going on?
It's so wild. There's a couple of players that were out there in sweaters. Tiger's in one of his polos from his new line, and he had the sweat going, already. And I don't think you had said a temperature early on was in the 60s there, so maybe it's humid. I don't know. But he's sitting there even right now after 4. The leaders, there's a few, including McIlroy and Spieth and Hovland and Schauffele, who are 2 under. So it's not like he's that far off, but it's never the first day we're worrying about with Tiger. Mike, right, Mike? It's how long can he go? A, can he make the cut? And B, if he makes the cut, how's he going to feel on Thursday? It's not so much the round he's playing, but if he's there for the weekend, how's the next round going to be? How's his recovery going to be? And that's what he's going to have to deal with for the rest of his career, of which he's really obviously shortening the play to basically the majors and maybe a couple of others. So it's going to be the question each time. I don't think he's a guy that's going to be going and doing events on the Champions Tour once he hits 50. I think it'll still be the majors and then probably following his son Charlie around, as Charlie starts to make his golfing move. So I think with Tiger, Mike, like everybody else, there's just hope every time he's on the course that he could pull out like he did the Masters a few years ago, that 1 4-day stretch where he's on the leaderboard on that Sunday and we all get that Tiger feeling again.
Yep, I'm treating that like the $20 bill you sometimes find in your pocket coming out of the dryer, where I don't go in expecting it at all anymore. I've guarded my expectations to a point where I can't be hurt by this, because that's just the reality now. And thankfully for this weekend, we talked with Matt Berry from ESPN yesterday. There's so many storylines to sink your teeth into here. What would be an incredible full circle moment for Rory McIlroy 10 years after his last major championship at Valhalla. You've got everyone, it seems, on the old guard of golf kind of ticked off at John Rahm for coming out and trying trying to act like he's still a part of the PGA, even though he's not, and the Live guy is still with that little bit of animosity there. Scotty Scheffler's finally a dad now. We thought his wife was going to be pregnant forever. Mercifully, they welcome their child into this world, and she gets to rest a little bit now, but can he rebound back to the form and the tear that he's been on this season? So there's plenty of great stuff to get to with this tournament. Very excited for the rest of those big names to tee off because we got them all heading over to Valhalla for the PGA Championship today. Claudia, though, speaking of fathers and sons here, LeBron James showing up to the draft combine this weekend after making a lot of waves. He got exactly what he wanted out of that Cleveland Cavaliers sideline experience and now just gets to watch the rest of us in the aftershock.
Yeah, and comes in with his hoodie as if nobody's going to know who he is. Bronny scored 13 points, 4-10 shooting in 23 minutes. Of course, the big question is he, and there you can see, draining the shot. There we go, Bronny. The question is he going to go pro or is he going to go college? Of course, he is declaring for the draft, but also entered the portal on April 5th, leaving USC. So I'm curious your take on this. I think I've been pretty vocal. I think it would be good for him and for college basketball to return and play a little bit there. But I know everybody wants to see him play with LeBron, even though LeBron has come back saying it's not necessarily a big thing for me to play with him. So whatever. We're all going to talk about it regardless. GoJo, what's your take?
Well, I think that was the interesting thing that came out of this. And Claudia, you make a really good point there. College basketball did not get an actual Bronny James experience. And we know part of that was the heart condition going into the year that derailed things. And so that would be exciting for men's college basketball that we talked about ad nauseum during the spring, had a bit of a star problem in the recent run of years compared to its women's basketball counterpart. So that would be great. But on the other side, Dad, the quotes from Bronny yesterday that came out where he was asked about this and said, yeah, I understand the conversation's been about me and my dad, but that's not why and how I want to come into the league. That's not what I'm focused on as a player. And sort of distance himself from that is really trying to do the best he can in an impossible task to stand on his own two legs. And I thought acquitted himself very well in discussing that the other day as his dad's sitting in the crowd and always going to be in the backdrop of his career. It's a tough ask for him, but he tried to come out and say all the right things the other day.
Certainly have seen, sons follow fathers into their line of work, but rarely do you see it. Rarely do you see it while they're still playing. You go Ken Griffey Sr., Ken Griffey Jr. playing on the same team was very cool, but you do not see that a lot. And as far as him going back to college, A, I don't think he's going back to college, and B, if he does, a lot of it would be where is he going? Because it would be in the portal. What team does he land on? Does he land on a high-profile team that we're going to see on TV a lot? And then as far as I think it's going to be into the NBA, in all honesty, Mike, he's better off not being on the same team as his dad. As much as his dad would like that, I think, and think that would be cool, just like I thought Bronny handled himself incredibly well about, starting his own. And he can say that all he wants, but that shadow is always going to hang over his head. His brother Bryce is coming up as well. I mean, it's just there and it's not going anywhere. But I absolutely think as a father, listen, I have said anytime I can do things with my kids, I love doing that. And now with my grandkids. And I said, to be able to do a show with my son has been an incredible experience. At ESPN, all the years I was there, the best ones were at the end when we got to share a microphone like we're doing now. It's a cool thing. But there's also the part of the son doing his own thing. And certainly you did your own thing for a bit before we got back together here. But I think for Bronny, I think it'd be better if he is not with his dad and just start his own path. Even though the shadow looms over that path, him being on his own path.
As a Nepo baby, that noise is always going to be there. And Bronny James has the most famous dad probably of anyone we've seen in quite a while, maybe since Jordan's kids decided to try and do this as well. That noise is always going to be there, but he seems to be a guy that really wants this and said, don't draft me because of my dad. Draft me because you think I can actually play and get this done. And as long as you love what you're doing and are willing to put the work in, which it seems at every step of the way Bronny has been willing to do. That's one thing that's always consistently come back. The rest of it is something he's used to dealing with at this point. It's only going to get louder, but at the very least, he's a guy with a lot of experience in this particular area. So I wish the young man well and hope it works out for him. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third. 3 quick stories to send everybody into the rest of their day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. That includes Samsung TV Plus, the Roku channel, Xumo Play, DraftKingsNetwork.com. And if you need to catch up, you can always catch the full episodes wherever you get DraftKings here on YouTube, for example. If you miss any of our great guests as well, thank you to NASCAR superstar Bubba Wallace and former NFL tight end and friend of the program, Kyle Rudolph, for stopping by to preview the All True and 2311 collaboration coming up this weekend for the NASCAR All-Star Race. Again, an incredible charitable platform combining with the folks for a great car that'll be running this weekend. Check that one out there. If you missed that, get it wherever you get your podcast. Like I said, on YouTube, all that fun stuff. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third. And start off with this. It's been so interesting to see over recent years as Hard Knocks, one of the hallmark products of the NFL's preseason for most of my adult lifetime, has gotten to a point where most people thought, oh, maybe this has become stale. Will they keep doing this? The NFL's response has been, we will give you more kinds of Hard Knocks at all times of the year. We have had in-season Hard Knocks added, and now, Dad, it was announced that streaming on Max, Hard Knocks will now have an off-season Hard Knocks, this year featuring the New York Giants. So, Dad, where are you at on digesting off-season content for these football teams, particularly the Giants?
I don't mind them trying that. I get it because it's worked to a point, but I have no interest in this. None. There'll be no hitting. There'll be working out. They'll be throwing the ball around. There'll be drills run. I got nothing for this. Nobody, you don't run into those who's trying to make the team, even though there's going to be free agents out there that don't. I get it. This one does not do a whole lot for me. How about you?
So I think for me, probably not either, just because, this is the one part of the NFL experience I actually got to live. So maybe it'll be fun to kind of point at things in the offseason program when me and the other future rental car salesmen are out there trying to make a team, will be kind of fun. But Deb, what I think this is, and it's worth noting, it premieres July 2nd. Is they're clearly trying to bridge the gap. The NFL right now is trying to spread out and see how much of the room they can take up, Claudia. And that gap, once you get done, mini camps, that last ones end sometime in June there, and then you get this month off or so before training camps pick up at the end of July. And July 2nd, trying to bridge that gap with even more NFL content just feels like them continuing to try and dominate.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to consume whatever you throw that at them if you put football on the front of it. If it is NFL, people will watch it. And so, I don't know, I think I could think of a few better teams that I'd rather watch than the Giants offseason. No offense to Giants fans. But I'll probably take a peek. Yeah, I'll probably watch some of it.
I was going to say, I'm not going to lie, I'll probably take a look. You get Malik Neighbors over there now, make or break year for Daniel Jones. Maybe we'll get to meet a little bit, kind of the same way for the quarterback documentary on Netflix. When you get to know some of these guys, maybe it changes your opinion a little bit for people on the outside. Kirk Cousins had the big glow up. Maybe Daniel Jones can have a similar thing. Kyle, who was on with us before, raves about how he was as a teammate. And so maybe if people get to know him a little bit more, that'll be another boost going into this season for them. Claudia, let's get to that. Another massive show on deck, one of my favorite events of the year. The Westminster Dog Show is nigh.
Yes, the 148th annual show, Sage, a mini poodle, won it. Now, the reason we're bringing this up, all respect to the show itself, but when the poodle won it, its owner then paraded it around, and just take a look. Walking, going great. They're both so proud, and just eats grass, man. Just straight down. Big tree fall hard. The
kind of fall that has no brace either, Dad. We talk about this in sports, and one of the first lessons I learned from you as a kid is you got to learn how to fall in your particular sport. I don't know if they account for this that much at the dog show. Plus, you're in a full suit here. You've got someone pulling you in the animal, so there's a lot of factors working against dude here.
Yeah, and then you need help getting up. I mean, that's a tough look there. But we've seen some of the people running around with the dogs, and the dogs are obviously in a lot better shape than a lot of people that are running the dogs around. And This one ended poorly and embarrassingly. I think the dog's kind of looking at him like, dude, get up. We got stuff to do here. Let's move this thing along.
The dog ticked. It finally gets to let its hair down a bit.
I was saying the poor dog just jumped through, fire and all these rings, and he's like, dude, you can't even walk.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
By the way,
Poor guy.
I love the Westminster Dog Show, and all I look for every year is, because I own 2 pugs and a bulldog, is a pug going to win Best in Show or a bulldog, or an English bulldog? And I think the pug, I believe. Now, there's different championships, but I'm looking at Westminster. Was it Biggie the Pug in 2018? I think that won. And then as far as Westminster for a bulldog, I think it was all the way back in 1913. There are other competitions where dogs have won Best in Show, but that's what I look for every year. I look for pugs and bulldogs to see how far they're going to go, because those are my favorites right now.
We love our sweet, derpy clan of short-nosed idiots that run around the house. They're wonderful. Biggie the Pug did win the Toy Group Dad, I believe, 6 years ago. An outstanding young man, a beautiful little puggerito that went out there and got the job done there. Congratulations. Every dog is a winner in this. And I will say, shout out to the dog here, Sage, the 11-year-old poodle that won this one, going over and checking on the owner here, or whoever's dog this was. I forget if this was Sage or not. But immediate reaction was to go over and sniff his handler a little bit, make sure they were doing okay. Even in a moment that's supposed to be about the dog, they were still looking out for the man in that, and that's why they are man's best friend. So an outstanding job by that little dog, and a good reminder, the bigger people falling is always going to be funny. You could loop that video 1,000 times, and I will laugh on the 1,000th time, because as a reformed big person, being big and falling down is almost always the perfect form of comedy. And speaking of things that big people like, oh, God, okay, you know what? We didn't have to go and do this.
I was thinking, I hoped they were going to do that, and they did. That's good.
So for anyone that's new around here, if you're watching on DraftKings Network right now, this is grainy security camera footage from a vacation 7 years ago where I decided to try and go get a workout in on the elliptical, and on the dismount hit the little back ridge and completely fell ass over tea kettle, almost sawed my ankle in half, and took a massive, thankfully no one was in there to see it live, but the quest of us going to the hotel manager telling them, we're not going to sue you, we'll sign whatever you want, we just need this footage to make fun of me on air.
Yeah, I don't think there are many hotel managers that think, wait, you're just getting this to make fun of them? We're like, oh, listen, we'll sign whatever you want that says we're not suing or anything like that. We just want to destroy this guy on TV on our show. So he was more than happy to give it to us, and this will live in infamy.
Blatant fall, though, I have to say, GoJo, was pretty graceful, so I'll give you that.
Like I said, I'm an athlete. I learned how to fall at an early age here. The guy at Westminster, not so much. Let's lift people up, Claudia, with the third and important ruling in our higher courts about one of the marquee issues facing America at this time.
Yeah, one of the headlines where you have to guess if it's actually true, but it is. In Fort Wayne, Indiana, a judge has ruled that tacos are sandwiches. A commercial developer was basically trying to put up a restaurant, a taco shop in a strip mall, so he had to bring it to court because of all of these issues with the residents. But either way, the fact that this was actually something that was said in court by a judge, tacos are sandwiches, very controversial, Senior. Thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, again, this is amazing it came up because of the zoning rules in this place on a sandwich shop as opposed to a restaurant. Sandwich shops other than and sandwich or Subway places other than like a Subway or a Jimmy John. So this is wild that it actually had to go to court to decide if a taco and a burrito are sandwiches. So I would never think of them as sandwiches. But again, I don't care. But it's amazing that it comes up in a legal way to have to be deemed that for a place to be built and go up in a strip mall.
Amazing that we've been asking the question about hot dogs for years, and now we dance around this with tacos and burritos. Still one day searching for the truth that's fueled July sports talk radio for centuries now, going all the way back to the Stone Age here. Congratulations to Taco Burritos on their newfound distinction. I'm a huge fan of your work as someone that lives in Southern California. I don't know if I've gone more than 2 days without eating, I guess, a sandwich now out here. We hope you don't go more than 2 days without listening to us. If you do, download, subscribe, rate, review. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.